favor. Draft someone who's going to help the team. Don't reach for a quarterback. Andrew Luck is still out there next year if the season does go awry.
But you always have this quarterback conversation every single year, too.
And that's the thing that gets old. You know, as a Vikings fan, it gets really old every year going, when are we going to get the next guy? When's the next guy coming? When are we going to get our version of Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady? Fill in the blank. He's not on the roster. He's not Joe Webb. Joe Webb is not the answer. Hey, the kid tried hard. He played, reasonably well.
Yep.
But the Bears game, for example, when there's certain things this kid does. Detroit, I don't think he has the it that it takes to be in the NFL.
Thanks for the effort, but we got to move on.
Yeah, under the circumstances, yeah, you did fine, sure. But that quarterback's not in the roster. There is some free agent fixes out there. Donovan McNabb, how much is left in the tank from him, and what do you have to pay to get that guy?
Yeah, that would be a patch on the wound, really. It wouldn't really be a long-term solution, and I don't know what he's going to give you. And like I said, I don't know what you're looking to do this year.
Right. We have new offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave, new head coach Leslie Frazier. The whole offensive scheme has shifted, so we don't even know what type of quarterback Bill Musgrave is looking for. He comes from Matt Ryan, who is a pocket drop-back quarterback, a little more stretch-the-field power running game versus what we did before. But we haven't seen it on the field, so we can't sit here today and say we know exactly what Bill Musgrave wants. We don't know.
Well, what are your expectations this year of the Vikings? What would you be happy with as a record? What would you be happy with as a final result?
I don't think record is going to be what determines my, I guess for lack of a better word, if we're 6-10, but I see that Jasper Brinkley can play football. I see that some of our younger offensive linemen, John Sullivan comes back, Phil Loadholt comes back, they can actually play. Chris DeGear, maybe he gets a shot this year. I want to see some improvement and see that we're only maybe 2 players away. Maybe we are that quarterback away. If that's the case, maybe we go out and we can make something happen next year. Maybe there's a free agent out there. Maybe you get a Carson Palmer. I don't know if you want to waste that kind of money this year, because I don't think one guy is going to make you 10-6. And you have to jump the Bears and you have to jump the Packers just to get into the playoff talk. That's a lot of work. Those teams are pretty good.
I don't feel fully comfortable with Carson Palmer myself right now. A guy I do feel comfortable with is Kevin Cobb, but I don't like paying the price for him, especially on a team that is probably 2 to 3 top 10, 15 draft picks away from competing again.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention maybe, in 2 or 3 years, maybe a half dozen free agents away from competing again as well. And when you talk about 2 or 3 years down the road, the same superstars we talked about before are going to be 2 or 3 years older, 2 or 3 years more or less interested.
Right.
Who knows what happens? I mean, you got to talk about even how about Longwell? We know how painful it is to sit through a bad kicking game.
Yeah, that's a guy
that
he's the most accurate kicker in the league, at least the last 2 years, if not longer. And I feel pretty comfortable rolling that guy out at any time to kick anywhere from 50 in. But do you waste $5 million or whatever the number is on a kicker because you're probably not going to need him? Is he going to be the reason you get to the playoffs or not? Probably not. But you'd like to have him in a couple years. When
you're a kicker and you're a neighbor to Tiger Woods, you're probably doing something pretty right.
Yeah, that is probably true.
You're a kicker, for Christ's sake. But I mean, do you waste a 3rd round draft pick on the highest rated kicker at some point or something like that? And who knows if that guy pans out?
Going back to the Kevin Cobb point, like Kevin Cobb, like you say, the price may be too high for him. But if you get Kevin Cobb in, obviously he comes in and starts right away for you. Is your offensive line intact enough to protect that guy? If you invest the 1st and the 3rd round pick, and 3 games into it, they Brett Favre him, and he doesn't know his name for 4 weeks, is that the kind of investment you want to make with this suspect offensive line?
That's a good question. He hasn't done much either, and not to mention that he's also what is he, 27, 28 years old?
Yep.
And you're not getting the 23, 24-year-old, you're getting the 27, 28-year-old, which I'm not saying 27, 28 is old.
Right.
But you've already got some years behind you, which is good and bad.
Yeah, because you have to now get him to your system. He's learned one system for 3, 4, 5 years.
So,
yeah, right.
Is he 30 when he figures it out, or what do you got left? I don't know. I mean...
Yeah, I agree. It's a very interesting year, as it is every year in the NFL. Plus with the lockout, can the new coach work with these guys? Is Bill Musgrave going to have the chance to put his system in early enough where you can take a Kevin Cobb or you can take Donovan McNabb, throw them in? I know they're seasoned professionals, especially in McNabb's case. They probably can fit to any system. But can you bring this group of players together
and make it work?
To even after a 6-10 season where it looked like the wheels were falling off,
Well, doesn't well take an example of a team that McNabb's coming from. In Washington, they always try to piece together the best free agents and the best team that they can, and it never works.
It's never worked. The teams that are successful
they draft well. I always
this,
bring up the Eagles. Eagles are a prime example of a team that drafts really well. They key in on 1 or 2 free agents a year. They might get them, they might not, but a solid team all the way around. I think that goes back to coaching too.
I think you're right. Andy Reid in charge of the whole operation there, and then of course the gold standard being the New England Patriots.
Yeah, you can't.
You lose players every year, and all of a sudden, player A that you've never heard of steps in at cornerback, and he picks off 8 passes. As a Pro Bowler. You lose linebacker C. In comes a guy you've never heard of before. Wide receiver, you get rid of Randy Moss. You dust off Deion Branch. This guy comes back in. So it's not only drafting. They drafted 2 tight ends last year, and both of them catch 5 to 6 touchdowns.
I think they both could have made the Pro Bowl.
If they were just one player, yeah. But it was just the parts. The system is bigger than the parts there. It's amazing the way they draft, and they're always picking in the bottom of the first round. They make shrewd trades. They trade down.
They make it work out, and all of a sudden, instead of having 7 draft picks or 8 or 9, they've got 15, 12, 15, 16, and they're making picks. They're not setting up for this year only. They're looking 2 or 3 years down the road too. Another team is like the Packers. They don't have any glaring needs, which really, really, really makes me mad. But everything works out for them because I've never heard their guys. All of a sudden, they're in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, they're very young. Obviously, the youngest team in the league last year. They win the Super Bowl, so I guess you say they are the best team. I don't know if they're the best team in the NFL, but at the end of last year, they were the best team. They won the Super Bowl. But they do have room to grow. You've got the most dynamic defensive player in the NFL right now in Clay Matthews. You've got B.J. Raji, who seems to start to be performing to his talent level.
Well, they've got key stars and key spots, it seems like. Even their secondary seems to be able to take away important people from the other team.
Yeah, Woodson goes out in the Super Bowl. They put the guys in.
Just works out for
and then, of course, you have Aaron Rodgers, who, like him or not, Vikings fans, this guy's good. He's not Manning, Breeze, or Brady, but him... You've got Phillip Rivers. There's your next line, Ben Roethlisberger. And Rodgers is, not arguably, he is better than Ben Roethlisberger. But, Ben's got the pedigree of a couple Super Bowls.
Sure, yeah. And he may not put up the 359 and 4 every week, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did either. Yeah,
the Packers proved you don't need a running game when you're that accurate. And, spread the field out. You got some speed. If James Jones ever learns to catch a pass, we're not even talking about. They were blowing teams out. They 3-4 touchdowns in the playoffs because the guy couldn't catch a football.
Well, how many did they drop in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
They dropped a couple.
So you've got to, Vikings-wise, you've got to find a way to slow down that offense among others. But right now, I guess we're not competing with the Packers. We're not on the Packers level.
We're at a crossroads, definitely. And do you feel the Vikings underachieved last year, or do you feel that they were right where they should be? Because there's a lot of other teams that take the 49ers, they underachieved, I think.
Yeah.
Take even the Cardinals, kind of a stretch. Maybe the Cardinals, maybe Cincinnati underachieved a little bit. Definitely Dallas. There's some teams that are picking ahead of us that I think underachieved. People were ready to put the Texans in the playoffs.
There was,
and here we are.
The Vikings could have beat Miami, could have beat Detroit, could have beat New England.
We could have beat the Packers too. We were pretty close on all those teams.
Yeah, that's true. So there's really 4 games, but if we get into the playoffs, are we sitting here right now? Are we all warm and fuzzy saying, "Boy, this is a good team. Everything's coming back"?
We won 10 games last year, and we feel really good about the direction of the team, or do we feel?
And I think it would have been smoke and mirrors. I think this was inevitable. We had the window in New Orleans to get to the Super Bowl. You tried to bring back Brett Favre. It didn't work out. And all of a sudden, your team got old overnight.
Yep.
Pat Williams, Kevin Williams, Steve Hutchinson.
I think we're still at the same crossroads, only drafting 22nd, 23rd instead of drafting 12th, which helps quite a bit.
And you better not fail. No matter who you pick at 12 or trade back, you better not fail.
And that's why I feel confident in the offensive lineman, because you can't hardly miss at that number. But I don't think that offensive lineman is a value at 12. I think it's a value at 17, 20, 22, 26. If you can trade back a few times, and maybe that guy is still there. I think there's probably 4 offensive linemen that are first round worthy.
Right.
I think we can get one of them and make it work out.
And like you said, or like we said with the quarterbacks before too, is that when one goes, make your move, get one. I think that's the same way with the offensive linemen. Well, if 1 or 2, you don't have to target and say, if we don't get Gabe Carini, we're really missing out. If we don't get Nate Soldier, there are guys that lump them together. They're a pretty good guy, so it doesn't really matter which one you take.
We talked about Newton and Gabbert probably being gone by the time the Vikings pick, unless they move up, and I don't think they're going to do that. Who do you like better, Locker or Mallet? I think they're the next two. To me, that's the next two value picks. That's going to go anywhere. They're going to draft it anywhere between 12, with the Vikings pick, and maybe 50.
Yeah, I think that Locker is better of the two. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've watched 50 hours of tape on each and I know their foot mechanics, but the fact that Jake Locker was going to be the number one pick in the draft last year, bar none, the guy comes back, he does what everyone always says, oh, go back, stay in school, do the right thing.
But then, you go backwards because of...
Yeah, and now he's punished because he went back to school and his team wasn't so good, and people say, oh, there's flaws, this. Maybe the guy had no offensive line to block for him. Maybe he was running for his life, which when I did watch Washington football, he sure looked like he was running for his life all the time.
I don't think people bring up Washington football and think of national powerhouses.
Right. And Mallet, now I watched Mallet more than I've seen Locker. Polished, strong arm. All the off-field questions, all the leadership capabilities.
Maybe he's a little cocky, who knows? But
right.
I know that when a guy is 6'6" or so, and
he fits. If you could draw the picture of the quarterback, he fits into that picture pretty close. But I'm a Jake Locker guy. I've said it all year. He was going to be the number one pick last year. If he was better than Sam Bradford last year, Bradford worked out pretty well. I'll take my chances.
I would take either
with
one
Jake
of those
Locker.
guys. I would feel comfortable with either one of those guys as my quarterback.
And I've heard what most people say is that Locker's footwork is off because of baseball. Most NFL coaches believe they can fix it. It's not a small problem. You can't fix talent. You can't fix smarts, but you can fix a flaw in a fundamental in a drop, whatever the case may be. And I think that most of the Ron Jaworskis, the John Grudens, the guys who actually understand football, I've heard from them that Locker is a great leader, that the footwork is not a big deal. And if it comes down to, do we think he's a Brett Favre-ish type leader, or do we think he's a Ryan Leaf-ish type of leader? I'm going to err on the side of caution, maybe giving up a little bit more in the accuracy, talent, strong arm department, and I'm going to go with the guy who looks like he might be a winner.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think we'll have to see how it turns out. I don't know, man. I don't know if we can draft that guy, though, too. Can we draft and trust that Ryan Mallet or Jake Locker comes into this team and starts right away? Do we need him to do that?
Right. So there's the questions for you Vikings fans. Hope you liked the blog. We'll try and update this maybe next week. We get closer to the draft. And, of course, after the draft, we'll have a follow-up and we'll talk about it. So thanks for checking out the first edition of the Sports Underground. He's Mike. I'm Kent. And we will talk to you soon. Bye.